Shalom and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Eli Bialik from Nefesh B'Nefesh. I am the community advisor, and we are thrilled to have you join us for another one of our series of communities researching options for Aliyah in different places throughout Israel. Today, we are going to be focusing on the city of Ramat Gan, and it is my pleasure to introduce our representatives from Ramat Gan. What I'd just like to mention as we start is that we will be having a 10-minute presentation on the community of Ramat Gan, and we will then be introducing the community representatives, the community contacts who will be talking about their experiences. And then we're going to be having a question and answers after that. So please be aware that we will not be answering questions until that time. Please do not raise your hand because we will not be able to address the questions during the presentation. Now, if you are potentially looking at making Aliyah within the next 10 months, I highly encourage you to go to the Nefesh B'Nefesh website, nbn.org.il, and to submit an Aliyah application so that we can assist you with beginning the process of making Aliyah. So we look forward to assisting you, not just with your Aliyah planning, but also with the process of making Aliyah. So this session will be moderated by Elisheva Ackerson-Maltz, who for the past 4.5 years has served as the Olim coordinator for English speakers in the municipality of Ramat Gan. She holds an MA in immigration and social integration. As part of her role in the municipality, she manages, develops, and supports the growing community of Olim in the city. She made Aliyah nearly 10 years ago from Baltimore, Maryland. And joining Elisheva are the following community contacts. Tamar Shmaryahu lives in the Charuzim neighborhood in Ramat Gan, next to Park HaYarkon and the Bursa, with her husband and 2 kids, 3 and 1 years old. Tamar is originally from the Boston area, and her husband made Aliyah from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Tamar made Aliyah 8 years ago and served as a lone soldier. After recently making a career change from PR and freelance content writing, Tamar finally found her calling as a high school English teacher in Tel Aviv. And Kara Frazen made Aliyah from Chicago in 2012. After 6 years in Jerusalem working in the nonprofit sector, Kara made the transition to living in Ramat Gan and working in high tech. In her free time, Kara enjoys hiking, trying new coffee places. Yes, me too. Traveling around the country, volunteering, and fighting for better food allergy awareness in Israel. And Sue Grass made Aliyah from Highland Park, New Jersey 2 years ago, following in the footsteps of her son Kobe Hodes, who was a lone soldier. She was a family therapist and administrator in a JCC, a young Judea leader, a school social worker, and a special education literacy teacher. She believes she has the best of both worlds, traveling back and forth, maintaining her relationships and her interests, studying Hebrew, working out, visiting friends and family, writing her memoirs, and teaching English in both countries. Currently, she is also a volunteer with Israel Connect. So, Elisheva, we are so happy that you have brought all these wonderful people together. Please introduce us to the city of Ramat Gan. And I understand that it's not just the Bursa and not just the safari.
Yes, thank you, Ellie. It's really happy. I'm glad to be here. And thank you to Sue, Kara, and Tamar for joining us and representing the city and their neighborhoods and sharing a bit about their Aliyah story. So as Ellie said, I'm Elisheva. I'm the coordinator, the Olim coordinator for English speakers in the municipality of Ramat Gan. For those that aren't familiar with Ramat Gan is the central city of the central region. Also more commonly known as the next door neighbor to Tel Aviv. We have pretty much a little bit of everything inside the city. We have suburban neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, parks, an excellent school system for ages 3 through 18, a public school system. We also have excellent institutes of higher education, for example, Bar-Ilan University, Shankar School of Design and Engineering, and the Beit Zvi School for Drama and Theater. Ramat Gan is also home to Tel Shomer Shiba Hospital, which, for those that are following the news on Corona, it's out there. You hear a lot about it in the news. We're right now working really hard on Corona research and trying to find a solution to the problem. Ramat Gan is, like I said, it's in the center of the Gush Dan area, the central region, which means that it's a jumping point for pretty much anywhere in the country. You can get easily to Tel Aviv, Petah Tikva, Haifa, Jerusalem, Beersheba. We have a train station, Savidor train station, that we share with Tel Aviv, and also central bus station, easy access to everywhere in the country. It's nice to know you don't need to have a car. You can rely on public transit. And right now, for anybody who has visited the city anytime in the past 2 years, you would see that we're right now working on the subway, the first subway system that's going to be coming to Israel. It's going to go all the way from Petah Tikva all the way down to the airport. So that's going to be running through one of the main streets in Ramat Gan. So we're getting there in terms of location, transportation, access to everything. It's really a central hub, which is great. A little bit about our department. The Ramat Gan Olim department sits within the municipality inside the education unit. We have 2 teams inside our department. One is the post Aliyah team, which I am a part of. We are here for anybody that's 18 plus, and our goal is to help you acclimatize into the Israeli society. We help you in terms of navigating bureaucracy. You also have Nefesh B'Nefesh, but we're also here if you need any support. Navigating bureaucracy, knowing what's available to you in the city, resources, events, services, and more. Understanding your rights and your access to rights. And just in general of connecting you to what is in the city. We also help with CVs, employment, understanding a little bit about the market in Israel. We, when it's not Corona, have a community center called Kernitzi 13, where we run community events. And we also, because one of the things that's most important for acclimatization is learning Hebrew. So after you finish your Misrata Klita voucher, you can also continue your Ulpan studies with us. We run a subsidized evening Ulpan that's subsidized by the municipality. And it's specifically to make sure that you have access to continuing your Hebrew learning as you go on to your next steps post Aliyah. The other team that we have within our department is the education team. We have education coordinators for Gan, elementary school, and high school. It's important to note in Ramat Gan, elementary school means 1st grade through 8th grade, and high school is 9th through 12th. It varies on what cities you're looking at. Some have different breakdowns of elementary versus high school versus middle school. We have coordinators specifically for those age groups that network with the schools inside the city, make sure that your child is getting services, understand what services are available from within the system and what services are available outside of the system to help with acclimatizing into the education system here in Israel. It also, they provide a bridge between you, the Ole family, and the Israeli system, understanding that if your child is sitting and politely raising their hand in class, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It's just they've been in an American school system and they've been taught, if you have something you want to add, we raise our hand, you don't just shout it out. And so we have coordinators that is their main role. They also, again, in terms of the focus on Hebrew, we have Hebrew programming specific for every age. We have a program that we run for Gan, which is called Hebrew and Art for ages 4 to 6. And they learn Hebrew words and then create art based on the Hebrew words that they learned in order that Hebrew learning is a fun and engaging environment. We also have after-school learning centers for elementary school where you can come, it's like an informal ulpan. You can come with your homework that you have written in Hebrew and have somebody help you go through it and understand the Hebrew aspects. So for example, math in Hebrew, somebody can sit there and explain to you why the problem is written the way that it is and what is the terminology. We also have in Ramat Gan something that's super unique. We have a high school that has an ulpan built in for Olim. The high school is known for accepting and absorbing new immigrants. The ulpan is built into the curriculum and they have a track that's built around it for their studies. And that is, I would say, overall, Ramat
Elisheva,
Gan.
can I ask you just about that high school ulpan? That's something which is very intriguing. Um, does a student necessarily have to start from ninth grade? What happens if somebody makes Aliyah in the middle of their high school career? Is that still applicable for them?
So the Ulpan is for everybody in the high school from grades 9 through 12th. So we've had folks that come in ninth grade, middle of ninth grade, 11th grade. We even had one case where somebody came in the middle of 12th, which I would say if anybody is in that situation, I really strongly recommend staying until you finish and not to come in the middle of senior year. And it's available for everyone. You don't have to go to that high school. We have had in the past where people start off at said high school so that they can utilize the Ulpan and then they transfer to another high school afterwards.
Great, thank you so much. Elisheva, it sounds that the Ramat Gan municipality has a lot to offer Olim. And I would love now if you could introduce the community contacts so they can tell us about why they love Ramat Gan.
So we're going to start off with Tamar. Tamar can share with us in terms of her community, her Aliyah experience. Go for it.
Sure. So I think I've been living in Ramat Gan for about 2 years now. We live in, like Ali said, the Haruzim neighborhood, which is right next to Park Yarkon. So we live like less than a 5-minute walk from Park Yarkon, which is like the central park of Israel. I think it's 100 square meters bigger, and it's really beautiful. So there's lots of nature. And Tel Aviv and the beach is just like a 10-minute bus ride away. If you want to walk there, it's a half an hour. No, sorry. If you want to walk to the beach, it's an hour. If you want to ride your bicycle, it's about half an hour from my neighborhood of Ramat Gan. Of course, Ramat Gan is huge. And my husband and in-laws live here. We have 2 little children, and one is in the Gan system. He just started this year. He's 3 years old, and he goes to a mamlachti dati Gan, so a religious. I forgot the translation for mamlachti, but we've been public school. Yes, public Gan. Gan is preschool, I think, in English. And we've been really happy with it. In terms of the community, so things are really starting to take shape here. There are people who are trying to put things together. Chabad has started to become pretty active in the area, and yeah, you meet a lot of people at the playgrounds having kids. And I'm an English teacher in Tel Aviv. It's also just like a 20-minute walk from here. So everything is very accessible, very easy. Healthcare too, banks, and I'm sure
Tamar, can I ask you, do you have many English-speaking friends?
I've been meeting I've been meeting people. There are people here who speak English, but you have to sort of like connect with them through either like the playgrounds or Facebook groups. So I think most people here are Hebrew speakers, or there are other Olims, like, well, there's a big Russian community here, but I hear a lot of French Olim in my neighborhood, and other internationals. My brother-in-law is Dutch, so there are people from all over. But you do hear English a lot, like around, and definitely more and more.
Great, thank you.
All right, next up is Kara.
Okay.
Kara, share with us a bit.
Hi, my name is Kara. I'm from Chicago originally. I made Aliyah about 8.5 years ago. I first made Aliyah to Jerusalem and I completed my master's at Hebrew University, and I worked in Jerusalem for a couple years, and then I moved to Ramat Gan about 2.5 years ago to work in the high-tech sector in Tel Aviv. it's great. I didn't know, Jerusalem's a great city, but I didn't know what I was lacking till I moved here. I'm really happy. As someone from an urban area, like Ramat Gan has everything. It's like a small village and a city together. I live in the city center area, which has a lot of like the classical mom and pop shops from like the 60s and 70s, but we're also undergoing a huge kind of gentrification and reimagining. So you have like a little shop with like an old guy who sells electronics, and then a bar next door, and then there's pop-up restaurants. It's a living, breathing city, and there's a lot going on, which I love, and everything is accessible. Like from where I live, I have anything I could need. If I want a bigger store, sure, I can hop in the car and go to another place or bigger shops, but everything is accessible, which is great. I work in Tel Aviv. It takes me 20 minutes by bus to get to my office every day, so it's really a great commute. And I like to spend my free time in Ramat Gan. Park Yarkon is by, but there's also Gan Leumi in the south of the city. Both parks are huge and beautiful, and I'll regularly go walking there on the weekends. But we're also really close to Ariel Sharon Park, which I don't believe is technically Ramat Gan.
Nope, it's ours.
Oh, there you go.
It
It's
is
also
ours.
great. That's nearby, and as well as like Ramat Gan is in the center of the center, so it's accessible to everything right off the highway, and you can get to things in every direction. So
Kara, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but is Ariel Sharon Park, is that the repurposed park that was really? Oh, wow.
It used to be a landfill. I actually went there with Elisheva once for a Ramat Gan trip. Pre-corona, we used to go do activities. Yeah, it used to be a landfill, and it was repurposed to a garden, and it's beautiful, shockingly so, and it doesn't smell bad, really. But yeah, Ramat Gan has a lot to offer, and I can say on the social aspect, I moved here knowing a few people, and I have a lot of friends in Tel Aviv, and also between Givatayim, I have friends in the area. There's a lot of English speakers, but there's also a lot of Olim in general. I hear a lot of Spanish and Portuguese as well. So yeah, I'm happy with Ramat Gan.
Great.
Thanks so much. And our final but not least is Sue. Sue, share with us in terms of your thoughts on Ramat Gan.
Okay, I've been living here for 3 years. I made Aliyah 2 years ago, but I've been here for 3 years for the most part. I was going back and forth before Corona a little bit more frequently than I am now. I live kind of in the middle of these two young women, and I can actually walk to the Park Hayarkon. I can walk to the Park Alumi. On Shabbat, I walk to Sarona, which is about 45 minutes. My joke is if Tel Aviv's Manhattan, give it times Brooklyn, and we live in Queens in Ramat Gan. And I think it's a very accurate description what Kara said about what's happening here. I live in a pretty old established neighborhood, and there are lots of small little mom and pop stores. Not a lot of people speak English in my neighborhood, which is good for my Hebrew. But there is a whole process of gentrification happening. I happen to be living in a brand new apartment that was just built. And on my block alone, there are 5 other buildings going on. And if you go to any place where there's a view, you can just count the building cranes. It's really astonishing what's happening here. But it's not just in Ramat Gan, it's in Tel Aviv, it's in Givatayim. I was in Haifa, it's happening up there. I think it's happening everywhere in Israel. There are many things that I really love about Ramat Gan that Tamar and Kara have touched on, not the least of which is how everything is available and how you can really get by without a car very comfortably walking. One of the things that I really appreciate here is the healthcare system. Our healthcare system is set up in such a way that we all have neighborhood little clinics. Mine is about a 6-minute walk from my house. And in my neighborhood clinic are multiple family doctors, nurses, They have a lab, they can do blood tests, urine tests, they have a pharmacy. And you hear horror stories about socialized medicine, but I'll tell you that I'm completely immunized, unlike most of my friends back in America. And I've been incredibly impressed by the efficiency of the vaccine rollout and by the quality of the healthcare that I've gotten. There's an incredible level of concern of preventive healthcare. Somebody in the Q&A had asked about things for retirees, and I think that that's an important concern, is access to good medical care. One thing that Elisheva didn't mention is that Tel HaShomer is the 9th ranked hospital in the entire world. And I have some personal experience, not for me, but for my son there. And I can attest to the fact that there are really top-notch doctors and nurses there. I've found many, many things to do. One of my favorite activities was going to Ulpan in Tel Aviv and having my hafsakah, or my break, and walking to the beach every day and sitting and eating my snack there, and then meeting friends for coffee or for lunch afterwards and going to the beach and hanging out. Unfortunately, now it's on Zoom. But through Ulpan, I've accumulated many friends from around the world. I have a very good friend from Germany. I have a good friend from Brazil, a good friend from Italy. I've made friends with people from the Ukraine. I have a friend from Paris who's starting a new Ulpan I'm taking tomorrow with me. So that's been very interesting. And outside of my experience coming from central New Jersey, I also belong to a country club in Give It Time, which is a 10, 15-minute walk from where I live now. And they have a beautiful pool outside and a beautiful pool inside. They have all kinds of exercise classes and a workout room. It's kind of like a JCC. They call it a country club, but it's kind of like a matnas, a center. They have bridge lessons and art lessons. And I've met a lot of people through there, and kind of have like a workout community there as well.
So, Sue, what I'd like to ask, I'm sort of getting the picture that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Ramat Gan is pretty much a geographic region that's in the middle of the Tel Aviv metropolitan, blob, and
Yes.
basically, and you pick and choose the different activities and your focus of different places where you want to go to based on the proximity. So it's not necessarily that you're doing most or all of your daily living in Ramat Gan, but rather you're living in Ramat Gan, you're sleeping in Ramat Gan, but you're enjoying the entire metropolitan area.
Well, for example, Give It Time and Ramat Gan are kind of like this. So my last apartment, my side of the street was Ramat Gan, and across the street, Derech Ben Gurion, was Give It Time, which my lawyer said to me was a very good deal because I'd be paying significantly less taxes. Not that the real estate taxes are very much here. But you're absolutely right. It's like a launching pad, and it's based on your interests. But again, in my neighborhood, within a 2 or 3 block radius, I can go to the post office. I can do all of my food shopping. I can get to a super farm, which is like their Rite Aid or their CVS. And I can pretty much run most of my errands. But there's a special shop in Give It Time. I love their tuna fish. So I walk there once a week or once every other week to do some shopping. So yeah, you're right.
Great, great. What I would love to ask all of our participants, if you could perhaps, if you have any sort of a suggestion as to who you would recommend would be the ideal person moving to Ramat Gan, as far as an ole. Is it appropriate for everybody? Is it appropriate just for a certain demographic, whether it's religious, secular, age-wise? What are your recommendations?
I think you're asking us, right? The panel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sure.
I think that's actually something that I really like about Ramat Gan is that it's for everyone. There's a different profile of every different type of person you can imagine. we were living in Givat Shmuel when we were first married, and one of the things that I didn't really like about Givat Shmuel was that everyone was the same type of person. And just growing up in the Boston area, or even in just Chutz La'aretz, I've come to appreciate diversity, and I missed that there. So living here has satisfied that need.
I would agree that it's for everyone, all ages, all walks of life. Like we're all in different stages of life, and it's comfortable. And religious, secular, there's something for everyone. I think there's so many synagogues in Ramat Gan. I think Elisheva told us.
Over 200.
Over 200. And there's also like a lot of diversity and type of people here. The only thing I could say is it might be a little hard if you're young and single. Maybe you'll have to try a little harder to meet people. But that's the only thing.
So I would echo everything that's been said. One of the things that I always like about walking down one of the main roads in Ramat Gan, Bialik, which has all of the little shops, it's also where the municipality sits. You can hear almost so many languages getting spoken on that one road. You see all age groups, you see little kids, you see the elderly, you see everybody in between. I don't think that we have one specific demographic.
Yes, I met a woman on Bialik Street, actually, who was from Morocco. So you're right. You can meet all kinds of people on Bialik Street.
So yeah, I would say it's a definite mix. Since we do have neighborhoods that are more suburbs, which is right on the top, the northern part of the city and the most southern part of the city, those are definitely more family oriented. However, it's not a city that's exclusively for families. You know, in city center, you have a ton of retirees, also families and students, because it's also where our young adult center is located. So it's really, there are some that are definitely more mixed. You have some neighborhoods, if you want to just be with other families, I can definitely recommend you privately of which ones to look at. And let's say if you're looking for easier commute to Bar Ilan, there's one neighborhood that the dorms for Bar Ilan sit inside that neighborhood. So you'll have mostly students there.
So Elisheva, could you name, and this is one of the questions in the chat box, not chat. We're not doing
in the
chat.
Q&A.
Q&A, right. Please don't put questions in the chat, only in the Q&A. As far as to name some of the neighborhoods that may be good options for our Olim.
I would say that if you're talking about specifically that have Anglos in them, pretty much every single neighborhood has a small percentage of Anglos. There isn't one that is Anglo-free. One of the things that's great on the one hand, and for some other people, they might see it as a downside, the Olim in Ramat Gan are spread across the entire city, which is also why we have Olim coordinators that work with all of the different schools, because we don't have just one that takes all of the Olim. So I would say that it depends on more of what your feel is, what sort of neighborhood you want, what sort of resources do you want to have access to. Again, like I said, we have neighborhoods that really feel like a cul-de-sac. And a lot of, like, if you want to be more of in a city feel of the neighborhood, then there's other neighborhoods that would be more suitable. So I would say that it's more of a matter of what you want out of your neighborhood. If, let's say, you're coming from, like I came from a suburb where I was able to walk alone in the middle of the street because there were never cars. We have neighborhoods that are like that. But if you're from more of a city, like if you're from Boston, Chicago, even parts of New Jersey that are more busy, we also have those.
Yes. I mean, the one thing I would say, Ellie, is that if it's somebody who's looking to live more in nature or to have more of a rural experience, probably Ramat Gan is not the best fit for that person, probably somewhere in the north or somewhere in the south. It is definitely more of a city feel and a city life. And, there's a lot of people living here. I think we have 160,000 residents. It's a very big town. Um, but there are a lot of people, and if that's not what you're looking for, then it wouldn't be a good fit.
Okay. And how about the cost of living? Is Ramat Gan an expensive city? How does it compare to the neighboring cities such as Givatayim and Tel Aviv? Anybody like to
Yeah,
address the issue of cost of living? Yeah,
I'll
Kara?
talk about it because I chose to move here after living in another city. And one of my biggest factors in choosing Ramat Gan was affordability. My boyfriend and I were moving from a 2-bedroom apartment in Jerusalem, and we weren't willing to sacrifice on space. And if we wanted the same thing in Tel Aviv, it would be thousands of shekels more. And in Ramat Gan, it was, I think, 200 shekels more a month. So in terms of affordability and renting, it is a spectrum because it depends on the neighborhood that you live in. But most of it is considerably more affordable than Tel Aviv, for sure, and parts of Givatayim as well. I'm sure in South Tel Aviv it's comparable, but like for more areas. And then also compared to Petah Tikva, okay, it's maybe a little bit more, but not much. So it's affordable if you look at the Merkaz as a whole. If you look at the entire country, it's on the higher side.
Yes. And I can speak to buying an apartment. The prices definitely go higher the closer you get to the city center of Tel Aviv. So there's Ramat Gan prices, and then there's Givatayim prices, and then there's Tel Aviv prices. And I think Ramat Gan is a good value. My apartment just got appraised for 400,000 shekels more than what I paid for it, and I've only moved in June. So, and that's kind of what happened to me with my last apartment as well. And I definitely could not get the same amount or the same quality in Givatayim or Tel Aviv, for example.
Okay. And can I ask, while we're on the topic of housing, what do you feel are the best resources to use when looking for an apartment, whether to rent or to buy in Ramat Gan?
There are lots of Facebook groups. We can send those to you, but Facebook groups more in Hebrew, but also some in English, but they're more options and it's more updated in Hebrew. And Yad Shaim, I've always used Yad Shtaim, and I think gotten all our apartments through Yad Shtaim.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that regarding Yad Shtaim, Nefesh B'Nefesh has an article on how to use Google Translate to navigate Yad Shtaim, so that even if you don't speak Hebrew, you can look for real estate, whether for renting or for purchasing, using the yad2.co.il website.
I think there is somewhat of a difference between looking for an apartment to rent and an apartment to buy. And my experience is that in some ways, Israel is very backwards in how they're still doing real estate. There's a lot of little real estate stores with 1 or 2 people working, and they have maybe 6 or 8 apartments, and that's what they're selling, and that's their whole inventory. And it's not like in America where they have, I can't think of it, but multiple listings where, you can see everything that's for sale on the market. It doesn't work like that. So I was very, very fortunate that one of my closest friends recommended her real estate agent, and we ended up becoming very good friends. But that was how I navigated through the system, with a very good friend and ultimately a very good lawyer.
Okay, so I just wanted on the point of realtors, Nefesh B'Nefesh, as an organization that promotes and facilitates Aliyah, we are unable to provide recommendations for any service providers, not for realtors, accountants, or lawyers. But feel free to use our Facebook groups and to ask people as far as what recommendations that they have, but we are not able to provide specific recommendations. Okay, so I'd like to ask now on the topic of Ivrit, the topic of Hebrew. Do you feel that Hebrew is essential for everyday life in Ramat Gan, or can you get by in English? Please share your thoughts.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Kara.
Okay, I'll just say that I moved here already speaking Hebrew, so I've never truly tried. But I would say I interact with everyone on a daily basis in Hebrew, and I don't really use English at all when I'm doing my day-to-day life here.
When I was looking to buy my first apartment, we were at dinner at somebody's house in Renana. And I'll never forget, the woman said to me in her South African accent, "Why would you want to live in Ramat Gan? It's so Israeli." And I'm like, I like Israelis. I can't speak to all the neighborhoods. I mean, the two neighborhoods that I lived in, it would be very hard to get by without Hebrew. I use a lot of Hebrew in my day-to-day life, but it's very simple Hebrew. It's not like I'm having an intellectual conversation with the guy who's selling me my tomatoes and my peppers. But if I need something, I can get it and I can understand the money and everything else. I find it fascinating. I never spoke Hebrew before. I did not grow up with any Jewish formal education in any way, shape, or form. And so I've come to this in my later years, and it's my new hobby. And I've been studying it now pretty seriously for about 3 years. And I'd say I'm at a solid intermediate level and I can hold my own in most conversations. But yes, if you're looking to live in an Anglo community or in an English speaking community, Ramat Gan is probably not the best fit for you. You will need some Hebrew.
Okay, and how about a sense of community such as in the North American sense? In other words, being involved around a certain, whether it's community center or a synagogue or other institution, does that type of community exist in Ramat Gan?
So there's a grassroots movement that is right now started about a year and a half ago. There's a community called Hilat Shachar, and it's a community that give a time in Ramat Gan together. And their goal is to create a community of religious, traditional, and secular Olim and Israelis to come together and be able to have a center where they can do holidays together, Shabbatot together, and bridge and build and expand. Right now, they have one synagogue in Givatayim, one synagogue in Ramat Gan, and there's a school in Ramat Gan that they're using as their base. I will say that the leaders of this community are two Israelis who are absolutely wonderful, and they have an open invitation, of course, not during with Corona and regulations, but open invitation for taking Olim, and if they want to find a Shabbat meal, of setting it up to help them meet more members of the community and expand onwards. It's growing. It's growing more in terms of the North American community vibe.
Fantastic. I look forward to seeing that grow. I actually was in Ramat Gan yesterday after not having been in Ramat Gan for quite a while. And I just, it was so fascinating to see the infrastructure projects and how things are just, developing in Ramat Gan, not as if beforehand, it was shoddy. It was just, but there's just so much that's happening now in Ramat Gan. It's going to be very exciting to see when everything is completed. Elisheva, I'd just like to ask you if you have any additional comments or invitation to our Olim about, who are interested in making Aliyah, and perhaps contacting whoever, would be able to assist them to gain further information. So please, feel free to share any thoughts.
So definitely everybody that has additional questions, they're welcome to be in touch with me. You'll be getting my email address. You can also be in touch with me on Facebook. It's Elisheva Ramat Gan. You can also be in touch with us via our Facebook page, which is Ramat Gan Olim Department. If I can't answer your question, I will connect you to the person who can. I'm also sure that there are these lovely community members that would also be able to answer you. We also have 2 different Facebook groups. If you have additional questions that are more community oriented, that you don't want to hear from me, you want to hear from somebody who lives in the community. One is specifically for parents. So anybody who has any sort of education related questions, family related questions, neighborhoods that would be best for their kids or what you're looking for, we have a group for that. And we also have a more general Facebook group for anybody to ask questions, which is Ramat Gan Olim and Internationals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. And Sue, do you have any last comments or recommendations for our Olim?
Well, I would give you the advice to be prepared for lots of bureaucracy, and that the best mindset is to look at it like it's a game that you have to play, and to always ask for help, because people here will always give you help if you ask, sometimes pitifully enough. Somebody will definitely come through. There are certain cultural things that you have to get used to, that it's, in my opinion, all a matter of thinking about. For example, Israelis love to blow their horns all the time. And like the second the light turns green, somebody, like 2 or 3 people are on their horn when you're driving, because maybe you didn't notice that, right? So I just look at it that Israelis are so involved with each other, and they care about each other so much that they just don't want you to miss a second of having some fun somewhere that you could be having if you would only just hit the gas and get out of their way and get to your place. But I think it's very, very important that you have an attitude like that, because there are many things that are jarring to our sensibilities. They're not the way we're used to. My husband jokes and calls Israel a first and a half world country. And in some ways, it really is like that. I mean, we are in the Middle East, and there are Middle Eastern things that happen here. There's a lot of bargaining. I was in one of my little stores, and I asked how much something was, and he told me, and he goes, okay, how about for 5 shekels less? And I said, okay, fine. That would never happen in America. So
Okay.
there's pros and cons to that.
So what you're saying is be ready for Israelis and for Israeli culture, but in a nutshell, you love it. Can we agree on that?
We can certainly agree on that, but I think a lot of it has to do with your attitude. I've met a lot of Olim over the years, and there are some people who have a very tough time dealing with the cultural dissonance.
Okay, so I would say a recommendation that is that people need to be flexible for new cultural norms.
Exactly. And there are many rewards to be reaped by keeping your mind open, and by realizing that it's a different culture. For example, when somebody here says, let's get coffee, they really mean it.
Okay, so who was the one before who had mentioned the coffee?
It was Kara. It's their hobby, right? But like in America, people say, let's get coffee. And it's just like a way of saying, okay, see you later, goodbye.
So what I'd like to do, I'd like to use that as a segue now for Kara, and to ask you, Kara, what would be your recommendations, or how what are your final thoughts as far as in inviting Olim to Ramat Gan?
I would say stay positive, for sure. It's an adventure, and if you look at it as such, then you'll enjoy it. And Ramat Gan is a combination of many small communities. And if you go to one and it's not right for you, try another one. And sometimes you have to find the right neighborhood that's right for you. And every neighborhood has a different vibe. So come with an open mind and don't be afraid to try a new place within the city. Every part is different.
Great. Thank you so much. Tamar, I see that you have been extremely active on the Q&A and you've been answering people's questions. And I thank you profusely for making yourself available for this. Any last pointers?
I think we also forgot to mention that Ali Shava is an amazing resource for us. I've had several issues or questions, and I've always messaged her on like Facebook Messenger, and she's always answered me. And I had an issue with the water company here, and she gave me the WhatsApp number for the mayor, who's really cool, by the way. And I'm sure it's not the mayor, but his representatives. And within a day or a week, a manager from the water company called me apologizing, saying, and took care of everything. So it's Ali Shava is just really also with my children, like there are lots of internationals in the gun, and having a Hebrew teacher come in for the internationals, many different things throughout the past 2-3 years that we've lived here. She's been super wonderful, and not every city has this, especially like a close relationship with and she's super active on all the Facebook groups, like making announcements with the school systems and she translates everything from Hebrew to English. And
she goes on appointments with you. She went to Bituach Leumi with me.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and she's helped me with filling out a million forms.
So I think that Elisheva has a fan club, and I can actually see that she's blushing. So that's great. That's great. So I'm going to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Elisheva, for arranging for today's webinar, and thank you, Tamar, Kara, and Sue for participating and sharing of your experiences and your thoughts about Ramat Gan. I think we learned a lot about the city, and that it has a lot to offer the majority of our Olim, and I very much recommend that our Olim continue their research about Ramat Gan. And I'd like to say thank you for everybody who has participated. And I just wanted to again mention that if you are looking at the potential of making Aliyah within the next 10 months, now would be the time to submit an Aliyah application on the Nefesh B'Nefesh website, nbn.org.il. And that way we'll be able to assist you both with your Aliyah process and with your Aliyah planning. Now, we weren't able to get to all of the questions or everybody's questions, and I just wanted to say that there will be a follow-up email that is sent to everybody who registered for this event, and we'll have contact information, and you'll be able to send questions to us directly in the future. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing everybody in Israel soon, and hopefully in Ramat Gan.